Why feminists want trigger warnings in legal classes. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I just had a realization about the whole trigger warning debate as it relates to university classes. A lot of people have mentioned that some feminists have gone so far as to say that there should be trigger warnings in legal classes. Like if you're studying law, you want to be a lawyer, you deserve trigger warnings when it comes to sexual violence being brought up. Obviously, this sounds ridiculous to absolutely everybody aside from hardcore feminists that will always agree with anything a feminist blogger that they look up to says. And obviously, men's rights advocates and anti-feminist type people think that this is not surprising because nothing surprises them anymore. However, despite the fact that putting trigger warnings into legal classes is seemingly nonsensical and would be to the detriment of absolutely everybody involved in potential rape trials, from people who are falsely accused of rape to people who want to prosecute rapists, there is actually a probable reason for this that I just figured out. Full disclosure, Hannah Wallen was talking about this on a recent episode of Honey Badger Radio, which is what eventually got me thinking about this. She was talking about the notion that campuses have done away with due process in rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and male-on-female violence to set the stage for greater society. Her theory, which I think is a good one, is that the feminists were hoping to get university students used to the idea that due process in these types of crimes was an unnecessary burden on young women, so that as these students aged, they would be okay with throwing away due process for men that are accused of crimes by women in the real world and not just on campus. This would be useful for feminism as a greater organization and career choice because their main industry is in family court and domestic violence counseling and prosecution. And so, if men could easily be charged and convicted of these crimes, it would give an abundance of career opportunities to gender studies majors, thus solidifying more of an industry for the feminist ideology. I think that what she is saying is very probably true, though I would speculate personally that the big government forces that are enabling and encouraging all of this have an even more sinister motive. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole at this moment. Regardless, here's what I think this has to do with trigger warnings. I think that perhaps if Hannah's theory is true about the goal being to get due process thrown away in the courts entirely for men accused of crimes by women, then trigger warnings around speaking of rape and sexual violence in legal classes exist because they don't want lawyers to even know about the law around such things. I mean, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? That if they want to get rid of due process for men that are accused of rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and domestic violence, then why would they even need to train lawyers to understand what is currently in the law around those topics? If they convinced even a sizable amount of young female law students that it was perfectly acceptable to avoid hearing the word rape in their legal classes, then these young women would obviously be completely averse to even considering actually being involved in a rape trial. Thus, an entire generation of lawyers could be given degrees, already assuming rapes shouldn't even go to trial, and that due process should go away, because they don't want to have to even think about rape because it's so icky and gross. And so, it would be a lot easier to ease into law the notion that men don't deserve due process when they are accused of such crimes, because they wouldn't even necessarily have any lawyers that were willing to be defense attorneys, because they were told in law school that they didn't have to even listen to anything about rape if they thought it was too icky. That's all I have to say for this video. If you found this personally useful in any way, please do consider helping me out on Patreon or PayPal. You can learn how to do that in the video's description. And of course, stay tuned.